So interacting with PLCs, let's talk about all the different types of connectors that you might see in the field when trying to connect to a PLC or communicate with a PLC, or either to connect the PLC maybe to another device in the field, maybe a PC, workstation, or a server, or even HMIs and different other field devices like frequency drives. So let's look at, for example, this first pin, which is quite an old pin connector, a 25 pin serial connector. So you'll see these usually with older PLCs which are quite outdated. So just to take note of this, that if you do see this, you need a 25 pin connector and probably one of these converters as well. So it takes the 25 pin and converts it to one of these DB9 standard pins. Next, let's look at this 8-pin DIN plug. So we traditionally use these on Delta PLCs, so they are quite common to see in the field. We've got our firewire plug, which only some PLCs still use, but for the most part these actually get used in frequency drive programming, but you do tend to see these sometimes in the field as well for PLCs. We've got our mini USB port, our printer USB port, our Ethernet cable, our female DB9 plug, our male DB9 plug. Here we made up a cable specifically for an application because we could not find this cable. So I made up this cable just for a specific project or purpose. So often what you'll need to do is sometimes you'll get a PLC which you don't have a programming cable for, and you actually need to go look at the schematics of how the cables are made up and actually make one of your own. I'll show you an example just now in this video of how this plug was actually made up. Then we've got our regular USB port as well. And just another thing that you need to know is that usually most of the COM ports on the PLCs are RS-232. So you need a converter which will convert your USB port on your PC to an RS-232 port. So for example, on this blue converter here, it actually takes your USB port and it converts it to an RS-232 communication port, which you can then use to actually connect to your PLC. Another one that you'll commonly see is this little box which is attached to a cable, and it's what we call a prolific USB to serial device, which actually then converts it to serial or RS-232 communication methods. So what you will often see is little plugs like this. I'm going to show you an example of one where we made up that other cable. So you'll often see these, and you will probably come across them quite often when making your own cables, because these sort of ports are extremely common in the field as well. So just to look at the cable we made up, which is this one. So now I'm just going to show you an example of how we actually soldered it. So this is what the enclosed one looks like, and we just taped it up there just to keep it insulated. Here's an example of how it was soldered. So we have a female DB9 on the one end, which is then soldered down to the back of these pins. And inside the DIN plug basically looks like this, with some pins at the back as well. And you'll see it's a 5-pin, and I used this for a very specific purpose for a Panasonic PLC, which there was no cables available. So you have to become comfortable with making your own cables, figuring out how to communicate with PLCs, because often the biggest problem with PLC programming in the field and debugging is actually the communication between your PC or software and your PLC. So I hope this has been a good introduction of different ways you can communicate with PLCs, what sort of cabling you get, how to make up your own cables. And so see you in the next lecture.